At the start of the flick, angular distance, Yoon-joo, a woman with photographic memory, follows a man on a bus. She follows his every moment. Once James, a knowledgeable and extremely intelligent criminal specializing in circumventing surveillance systems and seamlessly pulling off unhealthy crimes together with his own specialized team, bumps into her. However, since Yoon-joo is busy surveilling her target, she doesn't notice James. Once the bus arrives at a local station, the person gets out and Yoon-joo follows him. As he walks through the street, he pretends to talk with someone over the phone. The person then enters a restaurant, whereas Yoon-joo to boot follows his act. Whereas perceptive him, Yoon-joo gets caught at intervals the act, and conjointly the person angrily asks why she was following him from the subway. Before Yoon-joo can answer, the person introduces himself as Chief Detective Ang. World Organization Agency makes a specialty of surveillance to identify criminals and frauds. His division avoids sensational criminals, and focuses exclusively on following them around to gather information unknown to Yoon-joo. It looks that Chief Ang was testing her observation and learning skills as a vicinity of her job interview. Meanwhile, James goes to a nearby building to line up associate in nursing explosion so that he and his team can execute their mission of robbing a bank. He waits for the right temporal order for the sun to rise and mirror on the CCTV cameras. Once the explosion takes place, it becomes a distraction for police and firefighters standing on the highest aspect. James directs his team's movements below and orders them to begin the mission. His team nearly gets caught once one in all the men becomes greedy and decides to rob more money than planned. Once the robbers complete their mission, they now drive away as police chase behind them. Another Confederate who's a truck driver clashes with police cars, serving to his friends to flee away, and to boot manages to escape the scene himself. Back at intervals, the building chief Ang asks Yoon-joo to detail everything she noticed and memoized whereas she was observing him. Given her photographic memory, Yoon-joo neatly elaborates on everything that she saw from the bus to the building, but pauses once the chief asks regarding the newspaper he was carrying. Yoon-joo tries her best to remember what happened once the chief born his newspaper, but cannot seem to retrieve the memory. Once Chief Ang encourages her to play true once more in her head, Yoon-joo finally remembers that a young boy sitting next to him picked up the newspaper and took it with him. The chief is pleased with the result, so he tells Yoon-joo that she's utilized into his division. Later that night, the robbers' unit of measurement distributing their share of the money. Once James arrives at the scene and savagely injures the greedy man, World Organization Agency nearly got them caught. He burns the van that his men used for the robbery to depart. No trace for police investigation. Memoizing his share, James then heads to his boss's place. Back at his division, Chief Ang learns that the stealing was so dead executed that they didn't leave any trace behind. He orders his staff to seam through every CCTV footage at intervals the area, but to no avail. Even if they notice suspects, they cannot clearly verify any of the robbers due to their masks and their efficiency in robbing the bank. At his boss's place, James gets orders for his next mission to rob important files from associate in Nursing Accounting Corporation at intervals. In the meantime, Chief Ang and his team finally spot the truck driver throughout a corner store near to the bank. The chief then orders his staff to get his full details. Merely then Yoon-joo arrives at the point for her first day at the duty. Chief Wong introduces her to their leader Lee. Like all of her teammates, Yoon-joo is given associate in nursing animal code name, and whereas her preferences run towards the noble-sounding servit, Chief Ang wishes her to take the name Piggy. Next, Chief Wong introduces her to the investigating team, each having their code names as Sloth, Monkey, Mole, Serpent, Parrot, Ostrich, and Squirrel. Once the informing, the team soon goes secret to chase the truck guy. World Organization Agency they nickname Hippo, whereas on a van, Chief Ang puts on alternating small-scale maps of the varied regions in capital of Asian nation so as that he endlessly contains a bird's eye browse of where his officers are in any respect times. Next, each of the members goes on in their allotted directions, acting as Ancient of Us, whereas Chief Ang is on where he needs to be in his constantly van established for his functions, and helps wrangle his officers so things run as smoothly as possible. In his housing, James plans for his next mission to steal important accounting files from associate in Nursing Accounting Company. James's signature move is that he doesn't directly involve himself at intervals, the action preferring to line up everything out with mathematical exactitude so as that he can watch the events unfold from varied rooftop perches. On the other hand, Chief Hwang and his officers pay several weeks wandering around the city streets, tagging once those that match Hippo's physical description. Meanwhile, James and his men manage to complete their second mission, whereas packing his instrumentation on a prime aspect, James notices an individual photographing him from a building. Scared of being caught, he now goes to the building to find the person, and unmercifully kills him with a knife. Elsewhere, Leader Lee gets a call from her superior regarding the stealing. At intervals, the firm she then lashes out at the chief for not finding any information on the first case. Additionally, to figure the second one night, whereas going secret, Yoon-joo notices a bunch of men bullying a poor family for his or her money. The lads threaten to kill each of the members. As a political candidate herself, Yoon-joo cannot tolerate the bullying, so she intervenes in the state of affairs, once managing to fight off a pair of men. She's management back by the third one. Luckily, Chief Hwang arrives at the scene and rescues her. Later, he scolds Yoon-joo, explaining that as a surveillance officer, it's not their duty to intervene directly throughout a case, even if it implies that deed of us to die. Their exclusively duty is to trace targets with their eyes and feet. Meanwhile, James wishes to quit his line of labor, so he refuses to need any mission from his boss. The boss responds by inflicting an individual to kill James, whom he successfully defends against. He then goes back to his boss's place and takes the files for succeeding mission, furiously claiming that it would be his last. Later, in his housing, James answers a phone where he confirms that he's getting a passport to flee the country. At her work table, Yoon-joo realizes that they need bean chase Hippo at intervals the incorrect areas. She then informs the chief regarding it, and conjointly the officers now go secret to look for Hippo. Shortly, once Yoon-joo spots him and follows him exclusively to be distracted by a disaster that ensued in a local search. However, she gets a hold of him in associate in nursing housing and follows after. Once confirming Hippo's housing room, Chief Hwang allotted Skirrel to put hidden cameras outside Hippo's apartment that he successfully can. In the following scene, James heads his next and final mission to infiltrate the server space of this stock market and plant package, as requested by a mysterious broker. Manages to induce the informatics address of the stock exchange and conveys the attempt to his right man. Chief Wong and his officers monitor Hippo's behaviors and patiently expect any lead they'll get from him regarding the bank stealing case. The chief is then called upon by department head Lee to analyze the crime scene where James had dead the photographer. Reaching the artist's apartment, the chief realizes that the photographer was merely a liability, killed for mistakenly infiltrating James's second mission. He notes that James is the leader. World Organization agency watches his men perform the work from the highest aspect. One night, Yoon-joo and Chief Hwang rummaged through Hippo's garbage to seem for any clue. They find torn things of Sudoku, but the numbers unit of measurement all wrong. Once scanning through the computers, the officers discovered that the numbers are actually the informatics address for the stock market. The following day, the officers follow Hippo and ascertain that he's meeting with his fellow robbers to discuss the next mission. Skirrel manages to photograph them and hack their comms, obtaining the identities of all 6 criminals except their leader James through their comms department head Lee, and also the others back within the office hunt James's location, and Chief Wong and Yoon-joo straight off follow him. James reaches the top side of a building while his men drive towards the stock exchange for the heist. Suddenly he notices Chief Wong's officers waiting to arrest his men. James hastily calls his men and orders them to abort the mission. He then runs down the steps wherever Chief Wang and Yoon-joo square measure watching for him. With no possibility left, James smashes a window with a fireplace asphyxiator and jumps out of it, managing to flee the officers. Meantime, James's men square measure caught during a hearth fight between them and police officers, with them find yourself dead, whereas the others get in remission. Next, Top Dog Lee and her team tracks down James's phone location and convey the message to The chief and Yoon-soo the two track the leader, however still cannot get his correct sight. Yoon-soo finally gets a better view of James, once he follows him through associate in nursing alley the latter but identifies the secret officers, and runs away later within the street. Yoon-soo another time gets a glimpse of James, and Skirl World Health Organization is cloak and dagger as traffic police, and says that he'll try and get James's ID. Skirl then approaches him, and asks for associate degree. ID. James, realizing that he is one of the cloak and dagger officers, mutely punctures Skirl's neck with a pointy pen. A destroyed Yoon-joo right away goes for facilitate, however within the method she loses track of James within the hospital. Chief Wang and Yoon-soo wait outside the emergency room, once one among the nurses confirms that Skirl is dead as a result of a huge blood loss. Elsewhere, James is criticized by his boss for his incompetency, and failing the mission. Furious, he attacks his bosses, then murdering the boss and his bodyguards. He then acquires a pretend Thai passport, and gets able to leave South Korea. Elsewhere, Chief Wang and Yoon-soo square measure, devastated at the death of their colleague. As a result, the chief announces his resignation, whereas Yoon-soo takes a leave of absence, but whereas Yoon-joo is doing her laundry, she suddenly remembers victimization, her exceptional memory, that she had indiscriminately run into James in the past, particularly on the day of her police interview. James had fleetingly bumped into her, and walked past within a bus carrying a grocery booklet. Yoon-soo right away runs to the grocery store, and waits there, managing to catch sight of James once more, and desperately notifies Chief Wang and his officers, while staying on James's tail. Next, James walks into a eating house, and Yoon-soo follows him from behind. Once getting his food, he confronts Yoon-soo for following him. The officer acts normal, and refuses this statement, whereas also managing to send a text to her chief. Whereas James queries Yoon-soo, he notices Chief Wang getting into the restaurant. He right away acknowledges the chief having seen him during a mirror the day before. Once he was followed within the alley, James then leaves Yoon-soo and walks vent get in the parking zone. Soon Chief Wang takes over the pursuit, but James stabs him from behind and flees the world. As luck would have it, though, the wound isn't fatal shortly once Yoon-soo arrives at the scene, and therefore the chief orders her to continue the pursuit into the subway tunnels, but now she's recognized by James, and is eventually controlled prisoner. In the meantime, Department Head Lee orders a special weapons and tactics team to assist the officers. Once the SWAT team comes right down to the subway tunnel, and rounds him up, James lets go of Yoon-soo but escapes, and runs deeper into the tunnels. Because the chase goes on, James finds himself at bay between the advancing SWAT team, and therefore the mouth of the tunnel, which is being guarded by Chief Wang, who ran the good distance around despite his injuries. As James decides to charge at the chief, the latter, finding himself at the juncture of associate degree oncoming train, stands his ground to shoot at James, risking a 50-50 likelihood that the train can hit him. Fortunately, the train takes the opposite route, and Chief Wang shoots James with his revolver, instantly killing him. Encouraged by the success, Wang withdraws his resignation later. The officers placed on their formal garments, and attend Skirl's ceremonial occasion. Within the movie's final scene, Chief Wang, in conjunction with Yoon-soo, continues to execute more missions together with the pursuit of associate degree. International Terrorist World Health Organization seems to be James's help.